Hi there, Josh here. Welcome to Frames Per Second. Today we're looking at Braun Nizo Super 8 cameras. For quite some time I've been looking for a Super 8 camera of my own. I've been borrowing a friend of mine's for certain things, and it's been good, but it's always nice to have one of your own because then you don't have to worry about when it's available, or if you drop it you don't feel like you owe someone on your camera. So I've been looking for one of my own for quite a while, but I've also been looking for one that does slow motion. At the moment I have the Braun Nizo S560 and S800. The 800 version is a higher end version, the S560 is the mid version, and then there's another version which is the lower tier version. And really the difference is the lenses. This one can zoom in a lot more. It also looks like it is slightly higher quality. All the little buttons for settings and everything are exactly the same. This one just is a bit more metal as far as the lens goes, and this lens is more plastic, and obviously this one has a longer focal length. But they're all from the same manufacturer. So the 560 goes from 7mm to 56mm. Now that does sound really wide, but it is only a Super 8, so it is a lot more telephoto than you originally think. And then the 800 goes all the way up to 80, which it just gives you more options as far as, you know, if you're far away and whatnot. So it takes AA batteries, but if you want the light meter to work, you need a PX625 or PX13 battery, which there are replacement batteries for that now. Now I've shot a roll through each of these cameras, and the 560 has definitely been kept in better condition, even though it does have more scratches on the paint. The lens is significantly cleaner, and the viewfinder as well is quite clean. While with this camera, the 800, it does have like a little bit of fungus in the corner, which I don't think it affects it that much. The viewfinder of this particular camera does have some haze, which shouldn't affect the image, but it just affects your ability to focus and see, particularly if you are shooting towards the sun. If you're backlighting, it will really affect your ability to focus. One thing that should be mentioned is that the S800 only has a minimum distance of 1.5 meters, which is not that close, while the S560 has a minimum distance of 1 meter, which is a lot more helpful. Now, like I said earlier, the reason I was looking into this camera was because it does slow motion, as opposed to 24 frames per second, which is standard for motion picture, and then 18 frames per second, which is pretty standard for a lot of Super 8 cameras, because there aren't a lot of cameras that do that. There's the Nikon R8 and R10, which I also looked into, but they were just a bit out of my price range. But I did try getting an R8, but then the person I was going to buy it off decided to pull it and then put it back out twice the price, which was insane because they were not worth that much. If it was an R10 maybe. So this was the next option for me. Now one thing I do have to mention is when you are doing 54 frames per second, it does get quite dark because you obviously lose a whole stop of light. And that's because you need the shutter speed to be twice as fast so that there isn't any weird ghosting or motion blur. Now this is what it sounds like at 18 frames per second. This is what it sounds like at 24 frames per second. And this is what it sounds like at 54 frames per second. It is quite an intense difference, and another handy thing it has is there is a 54 button on the little frame rate knob, which even if you're on 18 or 24, if you hold that down, it'll do the 54. So you don't have to change the knob all the time, you can just hit that one if you want some slow motion. Now you also have a knob to let it know if you're outside or inside, which obviously sun or light bulb. And then if you want it to be automatic settings, that's what you set this top one to auto, and then this middle one to the red dot. But if you want to do manual, you can obviously switch it to manual here, and then play around with these knobs. Now you can also add in your own fades into the camera, so you can fade to black, or you can start at black and fade in with this little switch thing here, which is kind of a cool little feature. Now let's see on and off button. Obviously at 0 it's off. When you go to the bright red one, it's on. And then when you push it forward to the duller red one, that is your battery testing. One handy thing with these is if this is not connected, it will not power on, because this little like holder is your power source. So it's kind of handy, so you're not wasting battery if you accidentally leave it on. But if you have that disconnected, it won't fire. If you wanted to stop recording but the trigger is stuck in and it's still firing, you can just disconnect it, pull that button, and then it will stop firing and stop recording. Now there are a few little ports on the other side which I believe are for sound, but we're obviously not recording sound, and none of the Super 8 film made now does have a sound strip. Now there's a little switch on the side here that if you push up and push forward, it keeps it recording without you having to hold down the little trigger. Now I will say that the main negative of these cameras is that it's all manual focus. Now there's quite a few Super 8 cameras that do autofocus, which is super helpful, but this is purely manual focus, which makes it tricky, especially if you are following fast moving subjects. You obviously don't have much of a viewfinder to look through. Now that isn't held by the fact that the viewfinder is darker than what you can see with the human eye, which makes it a little bit trickier as well. It's really only when you're a bit zoomed in that you can really tell if you're focusing or not. But it is Super 8, so it is already softer looking, so it's not the biggest issue in the world. As you can see in some of this footage, I definitely wasn't in focus, but it looks fine. But for the most part, I think these are great cameras. I just wish, yeah, it had an autofocus setting so I didn't have to worry about that all the time. Yeah, also on the top you have kind of like a zoom and unzoom buttons. But yeah, it will only zoom in and out at one speed. You can't make it go fast or make it go slower. So if you want to do any slow zoom ins, you just have to do that manually. Now with the S800, you do get this little like arm thing that you can just twist on here, and it helps you with zooming if you want it to be a lot more smoother than if you're doing it with your own fingers, because you get a bit of distance away from the lens, which kind of adds less movement to it. Now these cameras are a bit heavy compared to other Super 8 cameras I've used, just because they are more solidly built and metal, but it is good quality and it is German engineering, so you know that it is going to be good. It's not the most comfortable eyepiece, especially if you don't have an eyepiece, it is going to be super annoying. Now while the viewfinder does have a lot of problems, one thing that is great about it is you can adjust it to your own eye. So if you're somebody with glasses, you can kind of adjust it with this little wheel and make it easier for you to see, and so you don't have to be using your glasses as well, which is really handy. Now one thing that is a bit more unique to the Braun Nizo cameras is that you load the film in from the back rather than the side. And one thing that this does help with is you don't have any pressure plate issues. Now there's been times where I've put in a Super 8 roll in another Super 8 camera and it didn't end up going through because of the pressure plate. And so then what I thought I had filmed didn't end up being filmed, which was a really big loss. But with this, you don't have that issue. It will push it forward enough and make sure it gets locked in so that you are recording every time you use it. With this camera you can also do time lapses or stop motion, because you can set it so that it does just one frame when you click the trigger. Or if you have a little shutter release cable, you can chuck it in here and use that. It is a good buy because it is a lot cheaper than the Nikons, though the Nikons are apparently easier to focus, but they're also manual focus as well. Now as far as Super 8 cameras go, people seem to go more for the Canon, the Kodaks, the Hanamexes, the Cheons, and I think these little German cameras are quite undervalued and underappreciated at the moment, so I'd say get in while you can, because they are great value, and they're really solid cameras with a lot of different options and ways you can play with it, and a few cool features as well. But anyway, I hope you liked the video, guys. Please let me know your thoughts on the footage, on the cameras in the comments below. Feel free to like and subscribe to this, post notifications when there's a new episode. Anyway, I'm Josh. This has been FramesPerSecond. Let's get out there and shoot some film.